test taking for your tween, for your teen, for a college kiddo. So before we really get going into the different strategies, the different things your teen needs to consider to get prepared, to feel ready for that test, I've got a question for you. So I always love to lead with some interaction. So I would love to hear from you, mamas. Is your teen someone who feels pretty prepared for tests? Is that something you think comes naturally to your teen? Or do you think there's always a little bit of rushing and a little bit of, oops, I needed that, and what was I supposed to bring again? So let me know down below. Is your teen prepared for tests? Is that something he's got handled? I want to know. And I want to also invite you to my Facebook group called Teaching Teens to Love Learning. If you're not a member yet, be sure to join us after the video by clicking the link in the description. So, preparation. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, we are talking about tests in general this week. So we're talking about like standardized things like the ACT, the SAT. We're also talking about things in the classroom like chapter tests and quizzes and all the other tests that your child might see student. So with the ACT, SAT, the things we consider are registration. I mean, that's a huge part of preparation, knowing what day we're taking the test, knowing, when and where and how much that's going to cost to register. And then we've also got to consider the day of the test. So this is the reason I was asking, is your teen someone who's pretty prepared for tests, or is there a lot of running around the day of tests? Because on the day of tests, there's going to be certain supplies that your teen needs. This is especially true for standardized tests, because like the ACT, SAT, your teen needs to bring a snack, needs to have some water, needs to have that admission ticket, his ID, and possibly directions. I mean, I know we're in the day and age of cell phones and GPS and all that stuff, but the ACT, SAT standardized tests that are not, really school, don't necessarily happen at school. So your child might need to go to a different testing center, and that's a big deal because that kind of adds to the nerves, especially if your child is driving himself or herself. So definitely registration is part of being prepared for those standardized tests. Also, day of stuff. Okay, not only stuff for break like the snack and water I mentioned, but also the actual calculator, the actual pencils, the things that your teen needs for the test that won't necessarily be provided. Okay, so I want to talk about more on the school side of things. Before I do, I want to say thank you so much for watching. There will be more videos here live on my Facebook channel for Ace Cookie Tutoring, as well as on my YouTube channel for Ace Cookie Tutoring. So be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow, so you always catch these videos live, or so you can catch the replay and share them with your family and friends. So, tests at school. Let's talk about them. Well, when it comes to preparation for like a unit test, a chapter test, even something as simple as a quiz, your child needs to know the teacher's expectations. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Does the math teacher, for example, want your child to show his steps, his work? Because I've had teachers before that you got partial credit for showing your work, even if your answer was wrong. I've had other teachers that if you didn't show your work, no matter if your answer was right or wrong, if all your child wrote or all I wrote was the final answer, then you get 0 credit because the teacher thinks maybe you cheated. Maybe the teacher thinks you just guessed a number. The teacher doesn't know that that your child knows how to do that problem. Okay? For something like a history test, something like an English test where there's lots of writing, do know, again, it depends on what age your child is. It depends on the teacher's expectation. It could be something like, how many words need to be written? When the teacher says, write an essay response, does the teacher really want an essay? Does your child's teacher expect it to be perfect when it comes to grammar? I mean, for me as the CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring, I want your children to write perfectly when it comes to grammar. I want it to make sense. I want it to really get their point across. But what is the teacher grading on? Because there are some teachers that they take away points for simply not being able to read the handwriting. There are teachers that take away points if your child doesn't appear to have written 2 paragraphs and the direction said 2 paragraphs. Okay, so your child needs to know how nitpicky each child is, let alone there might be requirements specific to that class, specific to that school, that the teacher gets no say in. Okay, but the students are expected to know. Now, another important part, preparation, the last thing I really want to leave you all with is the idea of study guides. Okay, much more common in middle school and even high school than college. But if your child gets one, your child needs to use that to prepare for the test. Okay, so definitely do know study guides are what your teen should be filling out, should be using to refer back to his notes with, and is the perfect time to be like, okay, no idea what the teacher means by this vocab word, no idea what diagram he's referring to. That is the time your child needs to go look at the book, go look at his notes, ask your friend, ask the teacher, hey, what was I supposed to have learned? You know, what particular concept here is like, are you really trying to get me to understand? Because I can tell you, for me, as a straight A student and being the nerd that I, totally am and, acknowledge, I would fill out the study guide and then I would have the teacher check it. I mean, it's not worth a grade, so a lot of students don't do them because most of the time study guides are just for the student's benefit, and it's up to the student, what to do with that. Well, like I said, for me, I filled it out. I went to the teacher and I had him check it because my thought was, okay, I filled out the study guide. This is everything you say I'm supposed to know for the test. If I know this forwards, backwards, inside and out, there's no way I can fail the test. And a lot of the times, what's on that study guide is exactly what's on the test. Now, I will one little side tangent. Just know your child, uses a study guide. Hopefully studies it, looks at notes, looks at the book based on what's on the study guide. It's totally fair, especially in the upper level classes like, high school, senior year, maybe even like college classes, the advanced classes, dual credit, whatever. There's not going to be necessarily everything on the study guide, and that's okay. I mean, the teacher doesn't have to give away everything, but your student will do much better on that test, be much better prepared if he's actually gone through the study guide instead of just totally ignoring it. Okay, so those are my biggest things I want to share with you about preparation. So the study guides, knowing what the teacher wants, actually registering, the supplies, because remember, supplies matter a big deal, ACT, SAT, the standardized test, but they also matter at school. Because if your child has like an open book test, for example, he doesn't bring his notes, can't really use those on the test. Maybe he's allowed to have a note card. Again, he needs to prepare to have that note card filled out, okay? Let alone maybe a calculator, let alone worksheets or different handouts the teachers provided. So if you've got questions, drop them down below. And another even better place to ask questions is in my Facebook group. So I'd love to invite everyone listening, all mamas, join me in my group called Teaching Teens to Love Learning, a group for mamas, by joining at the link below. Click that, answer a couple questions, it'll be in. And when you join the group, you will learn the 11 study skills all teens need to love learning. So if you want your teen to be an awesome test taker, to feel prepared for the next test by knowing how to learn, join me in the group. I'll see you tomorrow for the last video all about test taking strategies for high school students. Bye, mamas.